Hello everyone. So this session is about acceleration programs. Who is familiar with the concept of acceleration programs? Okay. Not too many people. So acceleration programs are becoming very popular. They are programs that bring together the entrepreneurial ecosystem. So we attract a group of entrepreneurs. We go through project process of selection, and then you bring also good mentors, also potential clients, investors, and during a period of time it can vary from 2 weeks, like the startup weekend, through 6 months, like the startup chill. You have intensive sessions to help the entrepreneurs to go to the market and be more successful. Startup acceleration programs are a very good way of also making due diligence of the startups, and also mixing people from different backgrounds together, and become very successful. One of the first is Y Combinator, is very known program in the Silicon Valley. There are also programs like the Techstars, which are very popular as well, and they're spread all over the country, the US, and also becoming popular in Europe. There's a startup bootcamp in Denmark, which is already running another program in Madrid. Also the Seed Camp from the UK, which runs several mini seed camps throughout Europe and the world, and they have been proven very, very successful. In the previous session, I don't know if you attend, one of the problems sometimes is to identify good startups, and so and to assess the risk and to assess the value of the team, and to try to very fast fine-tune the value proposition of startups. And this is all the things that acceleration programs try to address. And today with us we have Paul Kedrosky. I think everyone already knows him. He's from senior fellow from Kauffman Foundation, but also has a lot of experience with acceleration in San Diego. We have John Harthorne, who runs the CEO and founder of Mass Challenge, the biggest acceleration program in the world, like 190 startups last year, and over 100 million capital raised for the startups. Then Kraft from Singularity University Institute, but also connected with a lot of acceleration, especially in the health area, like the Rock Health, sorry. And Carlos Oliveira, who is from Leadership Business Consulting, a consulting company in Portugal, but they created and they run the GSI Acceleration, which is a acceleration. They have a partnership with the Portuguese Pavilion, which is a special acceleration for startups that come from Portugal that have a safe landing place to try to enter the US market. Beta I is also trying to promote a lot of acceleration. This is one of the main focus. The core activity of Beta I is acceleration programs. We run in Portugal the startup weekend together also with the sciences, and we've run 4 sessions this year. This is a weekend, 2 days with intensive activities. We're going to do the 4th edition today. It starts tonight. We also created a new concept called the Beta Start, which is a 1-month acceleration. We did 4 editions this year. We helped supported 24 startups, and we organizing for next year also the Techstar model, and we're trying also to promote with other partners the bringing Startup Shield program to Portugal in 2013. So it would be very helpful to have some input from the people, our speakers, to understand how can we do this in a better way. So first question, maybe I can ask John. Tell us your experience about the Mass Challenge. How does it happen? How does it work? And what is the real impact that created in Boston area?
Sure. So first let me just describe it, because not everybody will know what it is, and then I'll tell you a little bit more about why it works and what the impact is that we're having or seeing so far. So Mass Challenge is the largest ever startup competition and the largest ever startup accelerator in the world. We give away $1 million in cash awards annually to the world's highest impact startups. Any startup can enter Mass Challenge from anywhere in the world, in any industry. We don't take any equity from startups. We're a nonprofit. We don't place any restrictions on startups. They don't have to move to a certain location or work with a certain set of partners. The idea is that it's hard enough already to launch a successful startup without us applying more obstacles and more challenges in their path. Our mission is to catalyze a renaissance. So we're not fucking around. So we're attached to growth for the sake of growth. We're not in it for us. It's not about value capture. It's about creating more value in the world. The idea is, in fact, like our genesis, the creation of Mass Challenge, was started in the depth of this recession in December of 2008. The idea was born. The Dow was below 7,000. It was talk of the next Great Depression, 10 years of stagnation, the fall from grace of the entire Western world, a massive inflection point in the global economy, and it was a really deep, dark place. And looking at that, my co-founder and I were thinking, like, what happened? Like, how did this happen? Why is the world economy falling apart? And we had this realization that essentially, there's two components to business strategy. There's create value, which is making a pie. And then there's capturing value, which is taking a slice of pie. So every new business creates some value and then shares it with the rest of the system, and they take their own slice that they get to eat, and that's how business works. But right now, and for the last 20 years, about 40% of the US economy was focused on just financial services, which is largely part of the value capture mentality. And so much of the economy had been driven by value capture, which is, how do I get a slice of pie? They're not creating things, or it's making money from money or making money from algorithms, which is all smart and it's very, very necessary part of the system, but it become outsized. Too much emphasis on value capture, and we need more value creation. And who creates value, as we saw from Paul's talk this morning? It's all about the entrepreneur. It's all about the small business. They create all of the value in the economy. It all starts there. They don't just create a business, but an entire value chain, an entire industry, from which you can derive value from many, 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 many different indirect companies that derive value from that. So what we need is more of that. And the problem is that those entrepreneurs are in their mom's basement or in their garage, totally disconnected from the resources that they need to launch. They're going to need funding, advice, team members, promotion, customers, credibility, technology, office space, everything. They need everything by default. They start with nothing but an idea, and they need all of that support. And it's not anywhere in one place. They have to go and stand in 40 different lines to talk to 160 different people to maybe find 2 or 3 that will give them free advice and make a connection. And all the while, the clock is ticking and they're running out of ramen, right? They're running out of money. They've got a short runway before they just have to give up and go back to their job in accounting. And so that is the problem that we saw, and we said, the world needs value creation more than ever, and yet it's so hard. Money is fleeing risk as fast as it possibly can, and there's no concentrated support. So let's create a world, let's create a system that supports the value creator without taking anything in return. And explicitly is, by definition, promoting value creation around the world. And so we founded Mass Challenge as the first, I believe it's the only, but it might not be, nonprofit accelerator in the world. And we've explicitly targeted size as being a really relevant thing, because these companies typically fail. It's hard to predict winners at this stage in the game, and the vast majority of them will not have a huge success. But if you have, and that's why, frankly, an investor won't go visit you in your mom's basement, because it's just not worth their time, because your chances of success are so low that it's a waste of their effort and time. But when you put 125 startups on one floor, as we have, then you can guarantee that there's 10 or 15 major success stories on that floor, and suddenly the resources become inbound. So the value of Mass Challenge to the entrepreneur is that it provides credibility, because we filtered them through a judging process. We had almost 1,000 applications, and we identify the top 125, give them free resources for 3 months, access to mentors. We run almost 500 events, training, workshops, office hours, networking events, etc. And they get free office space, they get free software. We give away like almost $4 million in free stuff, in addition to the $1 million in prizes. And they get all of that, and then they get to work in this incredibly robust environment, because when an investor comes to visit the neighboring startup, they walk the floor and talk to everybody and say, what is this place? What's going on here? And so you get a lot of spillover. Now resources become inbound, and you can sit at your desk and work, and the investors come and wait in line and talk to you. And that's the real value of what we do. At the end, there's a final judging round, and we do genuinely give away $1 million in cash. But it's not really, honestly, the competition is a magic trick that we use to make the accelerator stuff work. It's like almost like we say, it's a lie we tell the world in order to make the rest of it happen. It's kind of an indirect thing. It's not actually a lie, we do give away the money. but it's a kind of a trick. And so far success, and then I'll move on. But so our very first class, we had 111 startups in it, and which was already the largest in the world. And then within a 12-month period of starting our program, those startups raised over $100 million in outside funding, and they more than doubled in size. They hired 509 new employees, and they started at 270 when they got to 509 new employees, so almost tripling in size. Really amazing success so far. But what we use, it's so hard in the early stage to really measure it. We've had 2 teams acquired from that first pool, so we've had 2 exits. One of them was a significant dollar amount, and the other a little bit less. So one over $10 million, not huge, but significant, and the other about $1.5 million in the acquisition. But already from this year's class, we have 125 startups. They've already raised over $20 million, and we just started their program in July. And they've already hired over or almost 500 employees in that time. So we're getting better at picking and better at supporting, and I think we'll see those numbers really accelerate through the roof.
Thank you, Tom. Paul, I would like you to ask you about your experience in the aspirations in San Diego, but also since you have a broad perspective about entrepreneurship, is there some kind of critical mass or some things that should be in place for a country or particular region to build and create successful startup acceleration programs? And also, if you also can ask after that, this is more complex, is what does a country like Portugal have in order to attract through acceleration programs international entrepreneurs, international investors, and mentors?
Sure. I'm on the look for that, so I'll just start with the one I remember.
Yeah, okay.
Hi, it's me again. So I'll start with the San Diego angle. So in San Diego, I ran a thing called the Von Liebig Center, which was a non-for-profit accelerator located inside the University of California in San Diego, which is a top research university in the University of California system in the U.S. And so we raised about $18 million-ish, private money, all private money. So the experiment was to try and marry private capital with a public university and a non-profit accelerator to try and drive the commercialization of early stage technologies that were located within UC San Diego. Because there's this bizarre tension inside of all universities, and in particular inside of the top research universities, about what exactly they should be doing with their intellectual property. On one level, you have this classic sort of academic mentality that this is research for research's sake. That's a wonderful thing, and I have no problem with that whatsoever. Then on the other end of things, you have this very sort of mercenary approach that the licensing offices can take, which is to say, I've got a piece of intellectual property and somebody wants it, and I'm gonna get as much from you as possible as I can on this transaction, and the next time you show up, I'm gonna do the exact same thing and pretend I don't know you. It's this kind of incredible system. It's just in many ways baffling. MIT in Boston probably does one of the best jobs of doing this stuff, but most universities are horrible at it. And so what we were trying to do was make it more obvious and straightforward about getting that technology out, because we were trying to wrap companies, entrepreneurs, founders, and at least a couple of early employees around this whole thing before we would take it out of the university, and we would use our money to do that. And it was a hilarious experiment, in a good way. For example, we started it off thinking that what we really were trying to do was help faculty members discover their latent entrepreneurial instincts. So we set up programs to say, here's a way of knowing, here's Mr. and Mrs. faculty member, where you can come and you can sit in through this very short course, boot camp almost, and learn about what it means for a piece of technology to have some commercial importance, right? Because that was one of the big problems, was they were stumbling over great pieces of IP and had no idea that this is something that could be a product or a company. So we thought, okay, here's the problem, is we'll go out and we'll train them on this stuff. So we set up all these programs, and I mentioned this to some folks last night, but I'll tell it again just because it amuses me so much. We set up all these programs, and in the first year of doing it, how many faculty members do you think attended those programs? Had to guess. If you say any number larger than 0, you'd be wrong. So it was 0. Nobody came, because that's one of the joys of having completed your PhD is you never have to learn anything again for the rest of your life. Because you're done. I'm out. I'm done on the whole learning thing. And so no one came. And so we thought, okay, well, this is bad. I mean, this isn't going to work very well if we continue to do it this way. And so we rethought the whole process. And we said, who is interested in learning, who does sort of have the wolf at the door, and is actually doing most of the heavy lifting and the research, are graduate students. So we re-engineered the whole thing and said, let's just ignore these faculty people, and let's orient all of this towards graduate students. And it was a fantastic success, because the graduate students were the ones closest to the technology. They were the least sure about what they were going to do when they left the university. And at the end of the process, they were the ones who were thinking, maybe I do want to be with this piece of technology that I've worked on for so long, and go out, there's a company created. So that was one of the big lessons we learned in doing this, because we needed to wrap it up that way. And then, as a result, we did, 30 or 40, I'll say 40 or 50 investments along the line. During the period when I was attached to the center, we had multiple exits, sold companies ranging from like $5 million to the smallest to I think about $170 million on the high end. And it was really a fascinating experiment in letting people discover their inner entrepreneur and legitimating that behavior, right? It was okay, because in academia, there's this weird pressure sometimes that, this doesn't count for tenure. So why should I do it, right? It's not part of the incentive system, so why should I do it? And so our thing was, I totally get that, and we're not trying to take anything away from the things you do in academia. If this is something you can do, it's helpful to the university, maybe it lets you scratch your own itch, explore your own interests, and we can be there to help. So that was the idea and sort of the quick version of the story of what we were trying to do at the von Liebig Center and that particular seed commercialization center, which was a really early, interesting experiment, I think, in trying to run a seed program within a university oriented around research. The other big lesson we learned, by the way, is that even when faculty members wanted to be the CEO, generally speaking, it wasn't a good idea. And I hated to do it because, again, I love seeing passionate founders, but the academic entrepreneurs, they had so many conflicting interests and other things they wanted to do, and sometimes their interests were somewhat whimsical, like I want to be the CEO for the next year, and then I want to take a year off because I'm doing this other thing, and it's like, the market doesn't work that way, my friend. I mean, we just can't do that. I want to help, and I want you to do that, and I'm delighted that you have a cross appointment at the University of Bologna, but you got to run the company, man. I mean, you can't just lead. And so it didn't really work so well on that side as much as we wanted it to, and so the graduate student model seemed to work really well. So that's a quick version on the von Liebig Center, and I can talk more about that later if folks are interested. But second question was about sort of the landscape and what works in terms of seed programs. So in the spirit of full disclosure, as Kauffman, we're an investor in Techstars. So we're I guess somewhat biased. And we're also an investor in AngelList, which is one of the larger kind of crowdsourced angel funding list things out there. Which is a way for angel investors to find one another and build kind of ad hoc syndicates for investing in early stage firms. So it used to be, I passed it around and say, hey, have you seen this such and such a company? And now we can kind of organize those using things like AngelList. And I think the emergence of all of these things are hugely important and really attractive because it allows people, investors, to find one another and coalesce around particular opportunities, as AngelList does. And then Techstars takes it kind of the next level, like Y Combinator, where you can then apply people and say, this thing just needs help, right? It needs care and nurturing and watering and feeding and all that good stuff. And these are the people who want to do it and have the patience to do it. And so to take it to the next step, what does Portugal need to kind of make that work? It's not about the money. I mean, it's a cliche, right? But it's about the only reason why a model like Mass Challenge or like von Liebig or like Techstars or like YC work is because of the people. Y Combinator without Paul Graham is a dead man walking. I mean, there's no there, right? I mean, there's a remarkable personality and vision behind it. It's attractive, this coalition of fantastically helpful people. So it doesn't mean you have to find a Paul Graham. It just means you have to recognize that to a greater or lesser degree, you need people with that level of uncynical passion. I mean, Paul is a huge believer in his companies. I mean, he's not just saying the things he's saying about the companies that flow through Y Combinator because he thinks it will get him great exits. Paul's doing something he's really passionate about and loves seeing the entrepreneurs that he works with do fantastic, world-changing things, and it's really exciting. And I think most of us who are on that side of it, really believe that. So the key to places like, when I say this, I was in Brazil recently having the same conversation, is to be able to attach people like that to these kinds of centers. So you need that network, that constellation of people who can provide advice on all the important elements of running the business. And if you don't have them locally, there are lots of ways to do it, either on a virtual basis or to run regular camping coaching sessions where you bring people in country and do it that way too. But never, my number one recommendation on this stuff when you're trying to do it is do not start with the money. Just because you can raise the money means nothing. I mean, it sounds like in Portugal, it's weirdly enough raising the money is the issue, which is like a total brain bender for me. But anyways, nevertheless, that's not the issue. It's bringing in the right people who can then in turn add all the value, and that's where the culture and that's where all the driving force in this comes from. That's why we love Techstars, for example, and why we love Y Combinator, is the people behind them are so great and so passionate and so totally believing in what their entrepreneurs are doing.
Thank you very much. Then I'll pass to Carlos Oliveira. Tell us a bit about the story behind GSI Accelerator and the role that it can play in order to bring some of the best startups in Portugal to the Silicon Valley ecosystem and to other clusters.
Pedro, thank you. Good morning, everybody. How many people had heard of GSI Accelerators before? Okay, quite a lot. And that the president was there last week. Our president was visiting this week on Monday. That he was in Silicon Valley promoting Portugal. Show of hands. Okay. Just to see the perspective. Why does it exist? I'm a management consultant. I've been in this doing management consulting for 15 years, and I've seen a lot of talent, very good talent. Portugal has got a lot of talent, and I should say this, fits me good to say that, but I'm really convinced of that. And I compare the entrepreneurs that we have with our corporate world, and really we've got good corporate world, but really what excites me, it's the entrepreneurs. People who are really fighting against a series of odds and that deserve to be with the top. And that's also important for the country. We need to create a lot of jobs, new products, new services. Our economy is really at a turning point, and this is a very important time for us. Where are we going to build all the new jobs, the new products, the new services, global products? I look at the numbers, I look at our economy, what we are producing, I look at what are the challenges of the global economy of the 21st century. Where are we going to produce about 36,000 million of exports? Where? Entrepreneurship. That's the biggest revolution that's going to happen in the next 5 years. So when we look at the Portuguese ecosystem, it's got a lot of disadvantages, a lot of fragilidades, weaknesses. So let's link all of this talent with the best, with the top, with Silicon Valley. And that was our thought. We are not experts. Let's not position ourselves as experts. There's a lot of experts out there and good people. And there's a lot of VIPs, very important Portuguese, people who are, not very important people, very important. So let's not be one of them. Let's be a connector. And this arrived from, we've got an office in San Francisco. I traveled there and I was really amazed at the culture, the expertise, the mass of talent, the whole ecosystem in Silicon Valley is really outstanding. So our thought was, let's link Portugal and the Portuguese entrepreneurs to the hyper clusters of innovation and entrepreneurship. That was our intuition, and that's why we built this program. We've got that thought that has been validated by some research. We've been seeing research showing that Israel, startup nation, managed to change its economy based on entrepreneurship because it linked with Silicon Valley, with the VCs, with the pool of talent, etc., etc. Even India, some of those companies, they didn't do it on their own. And when I was there, I saw a lot of countries and big companies linking themselves with Silicon Valley, with structured programs. There's a lot of countries. Australia, Chile, Mexico, European countries, even Egypt. A lot of countries are putting their entrepreneurs going past Silicon Valley. But Silicon Valley is not really, it's the largest reference. I don't have the idea that everything is good in Silicon Valley and everything is bad in Portugal. I've also been to Massachusetts, Austin, a whole lot of places. It's not the only hypercluster. You've got Singapore, you've got things happening in the east. But let's focus because we are there in Silicon Valley. So that's how the program emerged. Silicon Valley does not have a guichet d'atendimento, how do you say, an attendance counter. You know, you don't get there to the airport and entrepreneurs, here is your counter, come to the counter and we're going to explain. So our logic was, what is the best landing spot in a hypercluster of entrepreneurship and innovation? An accelerator. So we are a lot for accelerators, and we really promote, it's not we are at the Plug and Play Tech Center, but all the others. You know, I'm not here to promote the Plug and Play Tech Center. You can see it at Global Strategic Innovation on the net. Really, we think that an entrepreneur needs two things. Needs somebody who gets the idea to business and can help him do that, or her do that, and needs to reduce cost, needs to reduce risk, and needs to reduce time. And that was our logic of promoting a link with an accelerator. So this accelerating program has got 3-week or 6-week program, and it's not an isolated program. The idea is to connect and to articulate others in the Portuguese economy. So there are several partners in this. One of them is ICEP as institutional partners, but then there are a lot of companies and entities that are associated. I see Anna here, Flood also is supporting that, EDP, Beta I is also involved, EDP, Resul, several others that are joining in. So we're trying to have a common effort, a structured effort to promote the link with Silicon Valley. So basically that's how it emerged. I'm not going now into details at 3 months, what it gives, what it doesn't give, but just the rationale for it.
Thank you very much. Daniel, I'd like to have one of the clusters that are coming to be very, very successful in Portugal is health. We even have the health cluster, and we also have the Chamberlain Foundation, and the Lincoln Foundation, a lot of, and good startups. One of them is Kauffman here. I would like to understand what's your experience with health acceleration programs, and how do these programs can adapt to such a more complex sector like the health sector.
I've got some slides here. I can look at this. So, I'm not sure how to find this on here. So yeah, the healthcare space is interesting because it's so there's so many challenges, no matter if you're in the States or in Europe, and there's a lot of interesting opportunity. And so I'm a physician. I live in Silicon Valley, and I think one of the exciting concepts now is that we live in sort of accelerating times. Many of these things are many fields, some of which are listed here, can be applied to health and medicine. Not just therapies and drugs, but on the prevention side as well. And a lot of people now in the Silicon Valley area and Bay Area are taking their skills, whether they're people who work at Zynga and program games, thinking about gamification of health. They're starting to apply those to healthcare, the world of artificial intelligence, robotics, nanotechnology, all the apps. There's 17,000 or more apps on the Android and iPhone that relate to healthcare. And so I've gotten a bit more involved in this recently, through my involvement in a new program called Singularity University, which is sort of a bit of an accelerator based at NASA Ames in the heart of Silicon Valley. I don't know if this is going to die on me here. And has anyone here heard of Singularity University? Well, the broad concept here is that many technologies are accelerating, unlike this computer, from Moore's law and computational speed to here we go, to other fields. So, sure, enter is it. So, about 3 years ago, a new institution was formed, not a traditional university, based in the heart of Silicon Valley called founded by Ray Kurzweil, who wrote the book Singularity is Near, and Peter Diamandis, who's a physician who started the X Prize. And you might remember about 7 years ago, the Spaceship One that went to space. And so we bring together each summer about 80 students. The average age is about 35 or so, from 35 different countries. And what we're doing is cross-training people and getting them out of their silos. So in any kind of field, I think it's interesting if you can take people and teach them what the cutting edge is in artificial intelligence, and robotics, and in biotechnology, in nanotechnology, and in the environmental systems, in medicine, my field, in networks and computing, and see where the puck is going. It gets pretty exciting. If you can say, I've got the iPhone 4, what's the iPhone 6 going to be able to do? What kind of platforms could you build upon that? And so each summer now we bring together about, again, 80 students, train. We have kind of a who's who of technology coming through, from the inventor of the cell phone to the inventor of the internet, actually, have come through and learn where things are and where they're going, and then frame that within global unmet needs, whether that's in healthcare or other areas, from poverty to energy to the environment. And we also have 1 week programs, sort of 1 week executive programs, so you don't have 10 weeks. And you can come to Silicon Valley and experience these, including, and several interesting companies have actually spun out of that, sort of been incubated over the summer. Just a couple examples. You've all heard of the internet. There's also the idea of the matter net. So one of the problems in, let's say, the developing world is transporting drugs or vaccines. And this team of students this summer came up with the idea of using unmanned aerial vehicles, little $100 robotic flying machines, to move drugs or other things around, for example, in Sahara Africa, where there's not a lot of roads, and that's now being piloted in South America. Another company was looking at the future of transportation. The example being, we now have the Google self-driving car. It can drive autonomously. The future of transportation, maybe you just call a taxi on your cell phone, it shows up. These guys have developed a way of using an iPhone-based technology to do peer-to-peer car sharing, so you can share your car with anybody else and get paid for it. We put together a program focused around the future of healthcare that I run with Robin, who's here as well, called FutureMed, where we look at the future of all these technologies as applied to healthcare, and that's going to be happening in February. So that's sort of been an incubator, Singularity University, in terms of taking smart people together, cross-training, and seeing what unmet needs are, and then how to apply those, hopefully, to affect 1 billion people in 10 years. I've also been an advisor for a new incubator focused on healthcare called Rock Health. This is based in San Francisco, and the interesting thesis there is that this has only started back in May, and almost everybody who's been part of this incubator has not been in healthcare before, so it brings that kind of beginner's mind, people who are engineers or software programmers or designers to that area. This is the office that they had in Chinatown, and then about 2 weeks later, it turned into a beautiful incubation space, and in co-location about, I think, about 15 different companies. And being the rich area that it is in terms of experience, many sort of seasoned entrepreneurs would come through, from Todd Park, who's the head of Health and Human Services, and there's been a lot of government support now in the U.S. to support innovation in healthcare, to folks who wrote Lean Startup, to folks from Twitter, to the Chief Technology Officer of the United States. So there's a lot of insight from the governmental level that we can start fostering innovation in healthcare and beyond. The guy Kawasaki, who's a famous investor and entrepreneur. And this incubator in particular has gotten smart partners together, from major universities to the venture capital partners to come together. So this is a nonprofit, but seeded and already funded. So companies, new startups come into this without sharing equity, but get to $20,000, a place to live for 5 months, including a lot of the sort of infrastructure you need. So it's both got investors, government, smart industry around it. And I'll just describe, because they just had the first demo day last week, which I moderated, just some of the things that could happen in 5 months with new companies. This is a company called Skimble. They developed an app-based process for doing workouts on your phone. They've already had 1 million+ downloads. It's basically a free app, and that's an example of something that was built up with 2 people in less than 8 months, and they have a whole bunch of platforms on that. Another example, Cake Health, which just launched a few months ago live. At least in the United States, it's very difficult to manage your bills and health, so they developed sort of a mint.com model for managing health money and bills. Another smart company that spun out of UC Berkeley adapted cell phones to put a little attachment on that can look in your ear or look at your skin and record a picture of your ear or your skin and that's called cell scope. So they can take those imagery and send it to your doctor. And then it's just pretty simple technology attached to a mobile phone, which is going to be a big game changer in many ways. I've got another example on my phone of a I'll show it to people later. It can take my EKG with those little sensors on the back, and they can look in your ear, for example, and transmit that data to your pediatrician. Another company looking at mind-body medicine, they actually went to the Himalayas and hooked up a $100 brain-computer interface to monks who were meditating for years and looked at what was the signal that was involved in good meditation, and developed an app that can measure that. I missed the slide, sorry, but it can measure brain waves and tell you when you're in good meditation. Another big problem, if you look at problem spaces in healthcare, is obesity and diabetes. And the standard thing is your doctor will give you some way of saying how to eat healthy, but a new company developed a whole system around taking people who are pre-diabetics and helping them prevent their diabetes from progressing, and developed a whole system. And they've already shown in less than a few months that putting people on a pilot system could reduce their weight and their blood sugars and keep them from going on that expensive side. Last couple examples. In healthcare, a big problem is drug trials and the cost of doing trials. This company is doing sort of crowdsourced clinical trials called Gina Mera. Anybody here could start their own clinical trial to study the effect of sleep or vitamins or what have you, and all done based on the web at much lower price points. And this was just a few of the companies that spun out of that within 5 months. And so I can think the example here is that health is a very complicated area, but bringing people together from different fields is getting particularly interesting. And as we live in exponential times, we can apply new people and skills to this, and these incubators can be an important part of that.
Thank you very much. We started a bit late, so if you don't mind, we maybe use 10 more minutes, and we open some questions to the audience. So, any questions?
Go ahead.
How do you fund the math challenge? Was that 1 million? Okay, and you said it's non-profit, non-equity.
So we fund it through sponsorships and grants. And here's actually like part of the core of our philosophy that I think is really powerful and effective, is that you win by not trying to win. It's a weird thing, but we have people call us and ask how they can give us money because they want to stand near the flow of huge growth and potential that we've created by not demanding a take. And so if you think of the world of startups, so part of like the core realization that we had was that the value is all derived from the startups, right? And that for many, many, many years, investors have convinced the startup ecosystem that they are the unique, special, awesome thing that's on a pedestal, and you should have to wait in line to talk to these big investors because they're so special. But in fact, money is the only commodity in the entire system. It's the only thing that's not at all unique, that's actually totally substitutable. Right now, some of those investors are very smart and they've got connections and knowledge, so there's some variance there. But not as much as they would like you to believe. In fact, the thing that's really unique and scarce and amazing and hard to find is the incredible entrepreneur with an incredible opportunity that's working passionately and has a team rallying behind them, et cetera. So if you can aggregate that thing, everybody else will pay money to enter that one. So if you can
have special access to.
Yeah, so they get privilege. We don't provide exclusive access, but it's privileged access. So our top sponsors are like the Blackstone Private Equity Group, Microsoft, Xerox, IBM, and then a lot of law firms in the area that want to provide business services to the startups.
And it's kind of an entry fee to have access to.
And then what we do is we say, look, anybody can come and talk to the startups. If anybody has a resource that the startups could use, then yes, they can come and talk, of course. And the startups can work with anybody that they want. But Microsoft will be there on day one, and their logo is on the wall, and they get to give out free software right away from the get-go. And then we will provide targeted introductions for them. Everybody else, you can browse the web, all the teams are listed, their contact info is there, so that you can reach out on your own. But we will contact Microsoft and say, here's 4 teams that you want to look at. Based on the criteria you sent us up front, you're going to be really interested in these 4 teams, and I can make that intro for you and set up a private dinner or whatever. So we give them an extra level of hand-holding that we can't give to everybody else. If somebody else contacts us, we're like, yeah, feel free, contact them. So.
And how you started without well, now you have a curriculum, track record. How do you start?
Yeah, that was part of how we ended up at this strategy. We didn't actually, our first business plan was not a nonprofit, it was a for-profit originally, at the very, very, very first draft. And then it was like, well, how are we going to compete with like the Y Combinators and Techstars of the world? They've got a brand, people know who they are, they've got this accumulation of all these great mentors, and so how can we start? And so this was where we came to this realization, well, what if we set the price for startups at 0? Then won't we get all of the best startups? If you get all of the best startups, then that's how you create that inertia. And so that's what we did. And we have startups that come through Mass Challenge that will not apply to Y Combinator or Techstars, because why would I give up 6% of my equity when I've got a multi-billion-dollar business here? And I know I know it's going to work. And so yeah, I'm missing some resources, but I know I'll get them because I'm the scarce thing. I have the technology that's about to change the world of healthcare. So you know what? I don't need to pay somebody in order to get an introduction for a meeting, because people are dying to get meetings, with this type of technology. And so they'll come through us, but not go through other programs. And this is how we generate a lot of the success in the cycle. And our overarching criteria is high impact. We have a lot of similar sort of teams working on similar technologies to what Dan highlighted. Really amazing. We had one of our $100,000 winners has a cure for a specific form of blindness in children called Stargardt disease that can prevent tens of thousands of children from going blind. Right? That's a pretty powerful thing. And he's just one guy, recent PhD grad from MIT. Amazing guy, but when we put him on like 10 television shows, connected him to the chief of Harvard, the chair of Harvard Med School board, who wants to invest and join his board and things. So like the connections that we can provide is really amazing. And once you get that one little iteration of success, it becomes explosive and really just starts to turn.
That was my question.
If anybody would like to give us money, I can collect afterwards too. we do struggle. I mean, there's a question of the sustainability of it, which is a challenge. So I don't think that we'll be able to beg essentially forever. But what we believe is that the startups are never required to give back. We never ask them at all. But similarly, like I give MIT money every year, and I paid a lot of money to go to MIT, right? But I still donate back because of the goodwill, because they created so much value for me in my life. And we believe that over time, the startups that have these great exits and success stories, because we graduate 125 at a time, and they're all high value, high growth, that will generate goodwill that will provide a sustainable path over time. But the question is, will we die in the 5 years before we get to the point where they're exiting? And so that's the trick for us. And so far, every year, we've managed to increase the amount of money coming in by like 40%. Each year, and so we're still at a point where we're barely cash flow. We're borrowing from next year's income to pay off this year's debt, so we're borrowing forward a little bit, but this year we're getting to the point where we're almost, like next year we'll break out of that cycle and we'll be completely break even on an annual basis. And the question is, can we last 3 more years? And I think we can. But we're also looking at other alternatives.
On that point, I mean, we went through a similar discussion at UC San Diego on Von Liebig. And it was, the thing that really turned people's heads in terms of talking about it was saying, how much money on a yearly basis do you think the university raises from philanthropy? And everybody's sort of, guessing and whatever else. Of course, we had the numbers. The numbers were like, I think it was around $70 million, $100 billion from philanthropic giving back to UC San Diego every year. I said, okay, so how much money do you think we make every year as a university from licensing income, from the technologies? This was pre-Von Liebig. From the licensing the technologies that go out into the market. And the answer is around $7 million. So I said, okay, those are very dramatically different numbers, but here's the point. The point is, in the limit, where do you think the money that comes back to the university from philanthropic giving comes from? It comes from entrepreneurs. If we squeeze those entrepreneurs harder at the front end by giving them tighter deals on licensing income, what do you think is going to happen to philanthropic donations? It's going to fall off a cliff. So the perversity of our system was that we would squeeze people for 7, putting at risk 100. Right? Which makes absolutely no sense. So our thing was, we should literally be standing at the door of this institution with Walmart-style smarts on, saying, today, don't pay a centiband all day long, IP is yours, stand up, take this stuff. Because by squeezing people at the front, you put at risk the back-end 100, and it's the back-end 100 that make things like Von Liebig work. I mean, it was the philanthropic donations that made it work, not us squeezing people for licenses at the front, which was completely short-sighted and nonsensical, and yet every university does it. It's really remarkable.
More questions? So I think we can.
Can I say one more thing? Because I want to say one thing that for the Portuguese system, that this came up as an earlier question, sort of like, what can Portugal do to promote this? And I would say it's actually unbelievably easy. The problem is, a lot of the problem is, you have to just think of this as a system, as a whole system. And an entrepreneur needs a lot of separate, disparate resources. But each of those resources is only considering themselves as an independent variable. There's nobody solving the overall equation. Everybody's solving their own piece of it. So each individual investor is looking only at their deal flow and wondering, how do I make more money? How do I get something out of this? Each lawyer and law firm is thinking, how do I improve my deal flow and get more business from me? Each startup is only thinking about their startup. Each university only about their university and their budget. And the trick is simply to think of the entirety of the equation and say, how do I put all of those resources surrounding the startup in a world that's like this Walmart world or like the Ritz-Carlton, where you're like a concierge for that startup and say, what would you like to do today? What do you need? And let me connect you with those things. They're all here. Because the fact is that each individual variable is dramatically better off if they're coordinated as a system. And so it's in everybody's individual interest, but nobody's playing that role of coach or like to be interested. And the way that you get nominated to be that role is to just take it. Like, because nobody else is doing it. There's no competition for that. You just stand up and say, like, I'm in charge of the system. I got it. And then you coordinate the pieces, and they'll show up. And it works. It's amazing, and it works. But it just takes that sort of initial instinct to say, I'm going to take charge and start coordinating the pieces. And then you're the center of that universe, and it's amazing. And Beta I is doing a great job. We've been working with them, and there's a lot of great activities. I have a lot of faith and hope for it. So take charge.
Yeah, we're trying to do that.
Thank you.